What would it take to stop you from running? Losing a kidney? Getting stranded overnight during an ultra trail run in a storm? Or completing 30 Comrades Marathons, about 300 marathons, and still wanting more? Today's guest is Alan Coulter, 68 years old, an ultra-distance legend, survivor of bilharzia, race rescuer, and living proof that age is not the finish line. This is going to be a conversation about endurance, fear, survival, and why some people simply refuse to quit. Strap in, this one's going to go deep. A warm welcome to the show, Alan.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be on the show.
At 68, after 30 Comrades Marathons and 300 marathons, what still keeps you going?
I think it just becomes a way of life after a while. You don't know any better. And if you stop, you just can't wait to get back into it. So it becomes a way of life.
When did running stop being something you did and start becoming somebody you are?
I don't think there was a defining moment. Since school, I've always been fit, and it's just carried on throughout my whole life. I never really thought about it. It was just something that you do and something that you have to do.
When did you start running? And did you ever imagine that it would turn into a lifelong pursuit?
So what actually happened is at school, I was more of a track athlete, discus, javelin, and everything else. As at 90 kilograms, I was too heavy to be a runner. And then in 1983, the first Ironman in South Africa started, and I entered Ironman. And after I'd done Ironman, I was so fit that I didn't know what to do with myself. And I asked the guys, what is after Ironman? They said, there's only one event after Ironman, and that is Comrades. And it was 2 months later. So I carried on training, and I did my first Comrades in 1983, and it hasn't stopped since then, unfortunately.
So 30 Comrades Marathon finishes puts you in a totally different class. There's not many people. Tell us about that.
It was never meant to be as many as that. I stopped at 10. I got my first green number. If you do 10 Comrades Marathons, you get a green number, and that number stays with you for the rest of your life. And then in 2000, it was a big year. It was a millennium, and they wanted to have a big field. And my wife said, let's go and run it again. So we started running again, and we ran, and I haven't stopped since then. So now I'm in 30 and still going strong. So every one I started, fortunately, I've been able to finish. And that's where we've come to 30.
That is phenomenal, because you've actually entered 30 and you've completed 30.
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
So there's never been a situation where you haven't been able to finish due to injury or something like that?
No, not at all, not at all. It was never a thought in my mind to bail on any race or to give up. It was always a finish. And the funny thing is, people come to me and they say to me, they'd like to do the Comrades Marathon, but they don't think they'll finish. And I say to them, you probably won't finish. Rather stay at home and watch it on TV. And they get all upset with me. And I say, if you're going to be negative, you won't achieve anything. So you've got to go there with a positive attitude.
Yes.
And that is good advice. So go there and you know you're going to finish, but don't go there with a negative attitude.
What is it about Comrades that takes something out of you that other races don't?
That's quite a difficult question, because I've done some long ultra trail races, and they are 10 times more difficult than Comrades. Comrades, you're on a road where there's 100,000 spectators and everybody wants to help you. You stop and someone says to you, oh, you're right, you need something.
Yes.
And which makes it far easier than running a trail run on the top of the mountains when there's no one and you're on your own. So if anything happens, you're on your own. Where Comrades, you've got that big backup of people and spectators, and it's just such an atmosphere that you can't believe. So there's no chance that you're not finishing it.
Which Comrades nearly broke you, mentally or physically?
I would say all the Comrades, because I finished them all, was never a problem. And I never really had a bad run. You go through stages that you feel bad, but you just push through them. And eventually you get a second breath, and then you carry on again. And you'll go through another bad stage, but don't give up and think, oh, that's it, I can't carry on, which a lot of people do. And I've encouraged a lot of people, stopped and said, what's wrong? And they said the same thing, I can't carry on. And I walk with them and run with them a bit, and eventually they come right. And And that's the thing, is don't give up.
What's the brutal truth about Comrades that nobody warns you about?
I think everybody warns you about Comrades. I mean, if you're going into that race, you've got to make sure that you're going into it right. So you know everything. And everybody's got different advice. One person will say this, another person will say that. Eventually they get so confused, and that's the problem. So you know you're in for a hard day, because it's a valley of 1,000 hills. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's the up or the down run. You're going to battle anyway. But that's why you're there, because only unique people do that race.
Yes.
It's not a park runner.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Maybe for international listeners and viewers who don't know too much about Comrades, just give us a quick rundown. Each year it's run in a different direction, and each year it's slightly different in distance depending on the route. But how many kilometers is it?
well, the race varies between 88 kilometers and 92. My longest one is 92 and the shortest one is 88. So it just depends on roadworks or how they get around certain of the towns along the route. One is a down run, and the next year is an up run.
Yeah, and it goes from Pietermaritzburg to Durban, or vice versa.
Exactly, yes, yeah. And
and it attracts people from all over the world. It's quite an iconic race, isn't it?
Well, one of the things that I enjoy doing is the international runners run with blue numbers. They got a blue number, so you can pick them out amongst the rest of the South Africans. And I normally go up to them and say, what made you decide to come out here? And they've all said to me, this is the greatest ultra run in the world. Look, next year, it'll be 100 years old, the 100th running of the race. Not 100 years old, the 100th running. I mean, during the COVID years and the Second World War, we couldn't run the race. Not we,
yes.
but they couldn't run the race. And I asked them, and I met a New Zealand woman one day walking up a hill, and I stopped and I said, what brings you out here? And she said, she was going to get married, and she said to her husband said, where would you like to go on honeymoon? She said, I'll get married to you on one condition. We go to South Africa, I can run the Comrades, and then we can go wherever we need to go. And that was it. So that was something unique that makes it so special.
Yes. What does a typical training week look like for you now, Alan?
Well, in the old days, when I was younger, I could manage, because of my weight at 90 kilograms, I couldn't run over 100 kilometers a week, because I would just find myself breaking down. So what I did, it was quality over quantity. And that seemed to work for me. At one Comrades, I ran 850 kilometers and ran a 7:35, which is 5 minutes off a silver medal. And something like 2% of the runners get silver. So that quality helped me in the younger days. But now that I've got older, I can't do that sort of speed. It breaks me down. So the thing has changed a little bit and gone the other way around. So I would train slower than faster. And the slower seems to be the better method of training. And at the age of 68, I could train 2 days hard and I'll have to have 3 days rest in a week. So I couldn't train 5 or 6 days a week like I used to when I was younger.
All right.
And that would be the difference.
Yes. And you just spoke a little bit about the time of the Comrades Marathon.
Yeah.
What was your best time in the
7:35?
7:35.
So silver medal is 7.5 hours, which averages out at 5 minutes a kilometer, under 5 minutes a kilometer. So to run 5 minutes a kilometer for 90 kilometers is quite a feet.
Yeah, especially with those uphills, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So now, years ago, they used to just have a silver medal and a bronze medal and obviously a gold. But now they've got a bull roan, which is under 9 hours. So the guys that would train to go for a silver have taken it easier now, so they'd go for under 9, because that silver medal is so difficult to get.
Right.
So you've really got to be a good athlete to run a sub 7.
Yes. And
7.5.
Comrades Marathon is brutal because there's a gun that goes off, and if you're behind the line when that gun goes off, you don't make it. It's as if you've never even done it, isn't it?
That's right. And along the route, they've got cutoffs. So if you don't get there in a certain time, they cut you off. They put a rope across the road, they stop you, and that's it. So you've got to make sure that you can get there in the time. And in the old days when I ran it, the time limit was 11 hours, but now they've made it 12 hours. And in days gone by, 50% of the runners would finish between 10 and 11 hours. And now it's 50% of them finish between 11 and 12 hours. So it just shows you how people have actually slowed down.
you've never been close to that
No,
cutoff?
not at all. No.
But you've probably been on the sideline and watched some people coming there and the heartbreak as they just don't make it by a few seconds.
Yeah, that is the thing that I get very emotional about. I've finished the race and stood on the grandstands and waited for my friends to come in. But the last 15 minutes, you just get so emotional. I get emotional now just watching it because people are crawling, trying to get to the finish line. And after that whole day, to miss a cutoff, to miss the cutoff by 10 seconds after you've run for 12 hours.
Yeah.
It is something that you just can't explain to anybody. It
I
is
can imagine.
something different.
Yeah, devastating. What's the biggest training mistake you've made over the years?
Well, I'd say when I started running and getting serious after that Ironman that I ran my first Comrades, that first year I ran 52 races. So I don't think anywhere in the world there would be that many races. And this is just in Gauteng province in South Africa. It's not in the Cape or anywhere else.
Right.
So we have races on a Wednesday night, Saturday and Sunday. So you can run 3 races a week. And I did too much training. I mean, running.
Yeah.
And now that I've actually got older, I'm running 5 races a year.
Mm.
I've been very lucky with injuries. Not many injuries in my 68 years, in my 50 years of running.
Mm. Yeah, so you're training smarter now than harder.
Than harder, yeah.
Absolutely. What role does nutrition play, especially on these ultra distance running? How's that changed and adapted? How have you planned that over the years?
Yeah, okay. So when I started running, we knew nothing about nutrition. Yeah. And I went and spoke to a guy and he said, you've got to take carbohydrates. So I went to a roadhouse, which is I'm not sure what you'd call it overseas, and I ordered 4 waffles.
Okay.
And I ate 4 waffles, and the waiter looked at me and he thought, oh, there's something wrong with this guy. But I didn't know what carbohydrates were. So we ate cake, we ate bread, and we ate anything that was carbohydrates, potatoes and that. And over the years, my diet consists of 70% carbohydrates. I've been on a course with a guy that had actually put one of those thing on my arm, and he's checked me for 30 days to see my levels. And they've stayed right. And he said, Alan, there's nobody else that is like you. You're just unique. Don't go off the carbohydrates. You've been doing it your whole life. So that's it. And I don't take any supplements. I don't take any supplements anymore. I have a proper meal every night. We eat salads every night, vegetables and that. And that's good enough for me, because the nutrition and the things they sell these days is a multi-million rand industry. They are making money out of it. The gels, I can't take gels. And I just don't know how people can get through a race like that. I'm taking electrolytes because my levels, I don't drink much water, which is a problem. And I started getting cramps over the last 6 years, especially at night in my calves and that. And I went to a doctor, they did tests. They said everything was 100%, but you're dehydrated.
Oh, right.
And I don't. So when I wake up in the morning, I have a big glass of water and I try and drink during the day, and it seems to have helped. So electrolytes and the water are very important.
Yeah. So explain to us, what would you take with you? Well, let's have a look. What would you have the night before a big Comrades run as a dinner? Would you have breakfast in the morning? And what would you take with you during Comrades?
Well, years ago, I would have a massive breakfast and have nothing to eat on the 90 kilometers. I wouldn't eat at all. But see, over the last 20 years, my system has changed, and now I have to eat during the race. So I'll still have a breakfast. And the night before, I used to have carbohydrates, but now I've changed to having a steak, because I found that it upset my stomach if I had too many carbs.
Okay.
And so now I've changed, and I'm eating along the route. So I'll have the bananas and the potatoes. At a race like Comrades, they've got everything you need. They've got everything. It's not like anything else. I've run a race in Australia and they had nothing, just water. So on Comrades, they've got bananas, they've got nougat, they've got potatoes, they've got everything that you need. You don't need anything, and you don't need to carry anything on you.
Okay.
But a lot of the guys run with gels, and you can still get gels along the route.
Yes.
So it's unnecessary. Yeah. So that's what I do. I just run along the route and eat as I go along.
Yeah. Fantastic. And after the race, celebratory meal, what would you have?
The first
What
thing
would
I have
you-
is a beer.
Oh,
Yeah, the
nice.
first thing I have is a beer, which isn't a good thing because it dehydrates you. But anyway, you've been on the road for so many hours and you just need to relax. And that's what I
And
do.
celebrate. Fantastic. What's the biggest nutrition myth that you think runners still believe?
Is believing what they hear from the manufacturers and the marketing things about you're not going to finish unless you take this and that, which I just think is a lot of hogwash. It's a multi-million rand industry. And I still don't run with anything. And I still run away from the guys that are 20 years younger than me. I'm running better than I ever did. And I run away from all the youngsters that are taking all these jewels, and I just shake my head. And another thing is the Garmins. Garmins, I run and the guys, I meet them on the side of the road and they switch their Garmins off. And I say, why are you doing that? It's a false sense of security as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I say, just let that, when you run in Comrades, you can't stop your watch
No.
and say, oh, I ran 2 hours faster, but I had to stop to go to the toilet. I had to stop to eat something.
Yes.
You don't do that. So technology has actually made a huge impact on running.
Yes.
I mean, in the old days when they ran off-road, the Indians and the Hottentots in South Africa and that, it didn't have anything like that.
Yes.
And we didn't have shoes that had a 6% drop and an 8% drop. They ran barefoot.
Yes.
But everything is technology. Shoes don't last like they used to. 800 kilometers and they're flat. Where in the old days when I ran, we would run 3 Comrades and 3 years training in the same pair of shoes and no problems. But it's all a money-making thing.
And so do you not wear a device, a watch?
I do wear a device now.
Yep.
But especially when I run races, because I win a lot of my age categories. So
Yes.
I run on the watch.
Yeah. So you're looking at average pace when you're there? Or
Yes, yeah,
distance?
average pace and yeah, mainly
distance?
average pace,
Yes.
because I've won a lot of races in my 50 to 60, 60s and 60s up.
Yes.
So I'm still very competitive.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your shoes, because you've also got a unique situation there, haven't you?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I'm a size 13 shoe and I take a size 15 because you need the room in front of your shoe. Well, if you go to a shop and the guy says to you, what size shoe do you take? And you say a 10, he'll sell you a 10. And you're paying a lot of money for it because he doesn't understand. So that's the problem we've got here, where you have to take a shoe 2 sizes bigger. So as your foot swells, it can take that impact.
Especially important on these ultra distance.
Very important, yeah, because you lose toenails, and especially in the races like Comrades where there's a lot of downhills and a lot of uphills, your feet slide forward and you lose toenails.
Yeah.
So there's a special way of lacing your shoes, which is important, which you can pick up on the internet. And the most important thing is get the right shoe. And all the brands are different. So if I run in an ASICS, it doesn't mean you're going to run in an ASICS because our feet are different.
Yes.
I go into a shop and I say, what shoes have you got? Any straight glass shoes? And they don't know what I'm talking about. And what is a drop in that? I don't want a big drop because it actually is not good for you. People went, a couple of years ago, they went back to flat shoes and it didn't work because they've been used to running in these modern shoes.
Yes.
So they had to go back to them. And that is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure you know what shoe it works best for you. Take us back to the trail run where you and another runner got stranded overnight in a storm.
Right. Okay. So what I normally do in a year is the first 6 months from January until June, I train for Comrades. And then after Comrades, we have a 3-week rest. And then we start our trail season until the end of December. So I do a race every year that I've done 17 of them now. It's called the Mutter, which is a race over the Drakensberg. And then the last 6 years, I've actually been sweep. And it's the job of a sweep is to be at the back of the field and make sure that the last person gets through.
Yes.
And I've normally had 5 or 6 people with me. And then 2 years ago, I had a young girl with me. She's probably 30 years old. And we got the weather report in the morning that said it was going to be a sunny day, beautiful conditions. So we decided, stupidly enough, we decided not to take our warm jackets with us because you've got to carry everything. There's no second points. There's nothing. So what happens in this race, it's a unique race. We decide in the morning, there's 37 extreme athletes, and we decide who's going to win the race. And the person that says he's good enough to win the race, we send him out an hour earlier, and he takes out a paper with 37 names on it. And the rest of the field have all got numbers. They've got 5 numbers on them, sticky numbers. And he puts out the markers at certain points. And then when the runners go through, they just take off their tag and they stick it on the paper. And when I go through as a sweep, I would pick up the paper and see who's missing. And if there's anybody missing, I'd get on my radio, because all the runners have got radios, walkie-talkies. And I would say, listen, where's Joe Black? And he would say, Alan, I'm sorry. I had something to eat at the mark at the rock where the paper is, and I forgot to put my tag on.
Oh, right.
And then I know where he is. So we carried on during the day, and it was beautiful conditions. And in the last 8 kilometers of the race, the mist came in, and then the fog came in. Now, fog is a horrible thing. It's not the same as mist. You confuse them there. So we got onto the mountain. We were on top of the mountain, and then it started getting dark. We took out our torches, and this young girl was behind me, and she was shining a torch on my back. And I looked up, and there was a person 12 foot tall, and it was actually my shadow on the it was my shadow on the fog. Because fog, you can't see through fog. I don't know if you've ridden a car at night in fog. Your lights shine back at you. You can't use headlights. Yeah. So after the 3rd time, I just said to her, please, just put your torch off, because you get scared when you see this 14-foot person in front of you. Anyway, the weather turned bad. It started raining, and the temperature dropped, and we didn't have our warm jackets. So I had to make a call, and the call was, we've got to spend the night here. And then she said to me, are we going to die up here? And I said, no, we're not going to die. It's not serious. It's 4 degrees, but we can live through it. I've gone through worse. And anyway, to cut a long story short, we had to spend the night up there. And then...
sorry to interrupt you. How long is this ultra?
What's the distance? 87 kilometers.
Okay.
But quite extreme.
It's really a technical...
Very technical, yeah. So there's no clear path. So you've got to, on your GPS and that, you've got to get within 100 meters of certain points along the route. So you can go anywhere you want. I've done the race before where someone phoned me on the radio and they said, Alan, why are you walking over there? And I was 3 kilometers away on their left-hand side. And we didn't know where they were. And when I got home, a friend of mine had taken a photo that was with me. And when we blew up the photo, we saw the people 3 kilometers away on another ridge. So it depends where you go. So it makes it very difficult.
Yes. And there's a lot of elevation, it sounds like.
A lot of elevation. Well, it's in the South African Drakensberg. Yes. So there's a lot of elevation.
In the mountain range.
Up and down, yeah. And with a field of 37 people, you invariably don't see anybody.
Yeah.
At all.
And so now you're stranded. Where did you find shelter? Where did you shelter?
Yeah, we walked around for a while and we couldn't find shelter. And then I said to her, listen, just stay where you are. I'm going to go and look. And I found a bit of an overhang of a rock. It probably jutted out a foot or half a meter. And we lay underneath there, and we found one space blanket between us. We put the space blanket over our bodies, and we lay and we hugged each other, and we shivered the whole night. We didn't sleep a wink. And then the next morning, she said to me, oh, we're going to die. We're going to die. And I said, no. I said, just wait until the morning. When we get up, I'll know exactly where we are, because I've done the race so often. And when I got up the next morning, it was overcast. It was cloudy, so I couldn't see. So what I decided to do is I walked a kilometer in one direction, north, didn't recognize anything, came back to the original point, went west a kilometer, came back. And then when I went east on the 3rd attempt, I recognized something. And I said to her, listen, have you got any food left? She said, yes, because you carry all your own supplies. I said, eat everything you got, because we need the energy. It's going to be a long day. So she ate, and I ate all my stuff. And eventually we managed to get off the mountain. And the funny thing is, where we had slept that night, 200 meters from where we were sleeping was a shepherd's hut, but we didn't see it. Otherwise, we could have slept in there. But I mean, that happens. That happens. Yeah. But that's part of the fun of doing these races. And eventually we got down. And then when we got down, we were unpacking our bags and I saw all this food in her bag. And I said, what is this? I thought I told you. She said, no, she thought we'd still be another whole day.
So she didn't believe you.
Yeah,
and
so she didn't
saved
believe
some.
me. Yeah, so that was it. So we had fun.
So was there a moment that you realized this isn't just uncomfortable, this could be a bit dangerous?
I think in her eyes, it was very dangerous. But I've done another event where I'd been up on the Drakensberg and the temperature dropped to -11 and I was in short pants and a T-shirt. And that became serious. So what I experienced here with 4 degrees was nothing near serious. But because I've done it so long, it was never into panic mode or doubting myself or that we weren't going to get down all right.
And your confidence obviously also
my
helped
confidence.
her.
And the race organizer, which is a good friend of mine at base camp where the race started, was never worried that I was going to be in any trouble.
Yeah.
Which, when I spoke to him the next day, he said, Alan, I was never worried you weren't going to get down there.
Yeah.
So it actually helped.
That's where experience counts too. How did that experience change how you've treated ultra distances after that?
Well, being a sweep, I'd actually loaned my bag to a fellow runner, and I had 3 space blankets in the bottom of my, which I never ever use and never take out. So they were in there. But unfortunately, when he used my bag, I never checked, and he had taken those space blankets out. So what I've learned is never underestimate things. Always check, and never believe weather reports, because on a mountain you can have 4 seasons in one, and it changes in a flash. And I mean, I'm telling you, you can see rain 300 meters away, and there's a storm here, right over here, and you are dry. And I've been on top of the mountain before where the rain has come from underneath. I've been on the edge of a cliff running, and the rain has come on the side and it's gone up. The rain has come up, and I just lay down and waited for the storm to go and carried on. So the weather changes like you can't believe. So what I've learned is don't underestimate things, and always take enough food for 2 days. If you're doing a 1-day event, always take more than necessary, and always take warm clothing.
You contracted bilharzia and lost a kidney. How close were you to quitting running at that point?
Well, as I said before, 90 kilograms, I was too heavy as a runner. So I was actually a canoeist. I started off as a canoeist. I've been paddling for 40 years. And unfortunately, in South Africa, our rivers are pretty polluted. And there's a parasite that lives in the river called bilharzia, which actually lives in shells of snails. And over the years, I'd actually picked up bilharzia, which gets into your system, and it is there for life. So I can't donate blood because I've got it in my system. And I was training for Ironman, and I did a triathlon, and at the finish I collapsed, and a friend of mine who was a urologist, he said to me, what is going on? And I said, I don't know. I've got such a pain in my stomach. So he said, come and see me tomorrow. And I went into hospital, and my one kidney was 7 times bigger than my other kidney. It actually was blocked from this bilharzia and swollen. So he said, you are actually lucky to be alive. If that had burst while you were running, you wouldn't be here today. And so he removed the kidney, and he put on a colostomy, one of those bags on the side, and it was still 2 weeks to Ironman. So I went and had the op on the Friday, but I was super fit. I'd been training 8 hours a day, and I went home, and 2 days later I decided to go for a run. But I was running skew like this with this bag on my side, thinking that I could do Ironman, which was almost impossible. But you know how people think, especially when you're youngsters. And it didn't work. So that was it. So he said, look, you'll have to buy a camera and take photographs. You won't be able to run with kidney, and especially with hydration and doing the events you do, dehydrating with one kidney. And so I stopped. I got my green number for Comrades, and I stopped for 5 years. And then when my wife said, let's run, I went to my urologist and said, will it be possible to run Comrades? He said, as long as you run and take it easy and take a lot of liquids. And I did. And like I said, I've never stopped since then. But a funny thing happened. A guy phoned me one day and he said, are you Alan Coulter? I said, yeah. He said, look, I've heard about you. running with one kidney? And I said, yes, I do. He said, I've given my kidney to my daughter, which needed a kidney. And he said, I'm a runner, but the doctors told me I'd never be able to run again. So I said, well, since I've lost my kidney, I've run 8 Comrades. And we are still friends now, and he's run 12 since the day I told him that he can do it. So don't tell people that are like us that you can't do something. You can do anything that you set your mind to.
So losing a kidney and yet you still keep going. That is phenomenal, especially when doctors think that it's not possible.
That is not possible, yeah.
Has that caused difficulty? Do you have to watch out for things when
No,
you do your training or
the
whatever?
funny thing is, like I say, I don't drink a lot, and it has never affected me. It has never affected me. I've never gone into renal failure or anything like that. And I still do all these long distance events, but you just know, I think you get to know yourself so well, and you know when to drink. And a lot of these trail runs that I go with people, you actually get carried away, you're taking strain, the weather's hard, and I say, don't forget to drink. And they don't drink because your mind is so active on the scenery and this and that and the heat, and they don't drink. And you've got to remind yourself to drink and remind the people around you to drink.
Right.
Because that could become a problem with anybody, with any runner.
Yes. So you mentioned you stopped running for about 5 years. Did you stop completely?
What actually happened is after this kidney problem, my wife had run 3 Comrades, and I said to her, well, why? Because I can't run anymore. You go and run, and I'll look after kids because our children were still young. So she carried on, and she eventually got her green number. So she's done 11 Comrades. Took her 23 years, finished every one she started. And that was probably the reason why I stopped. And then in 2000, when she said, let's run, I decided to start again.
You're right.
So that was the only reason why I actually stopped.
What was the hardest during that time of not being able to run? Was that mentally challenging, and how did you overcome that?
I still ran, but I didn't run Comrades. So I would still do the normal races with her, but Comrades wasn't my goal.
Okay. So you still kept on training?
Yes, I
and
never
still
stopped.
doing the smaller.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Did losing a kidney change how you listen to your body?
As far as the dehydration goes, I had to be more aware that I wasn't normal, that I had to look after it.
Right. And so what would the difference there be? Would you be taking smaller amounts more often? Or is there something in particular that you had to change there?
Yeah, I did an Ironman with inexperienced seconds, and over a day, over the 10 hours that I did this Ironman in, they had given me 12 liters of water, and I became hydrated, which is actually worse than dehydration.
Right.
And I put on 5 kilograms of weight, and they took me into the medical tent, put me on a drip, inexperienced medical students, put me on a drip, put me on a second drip. And while they were putting me on the third drip, a doctor came in, felt me, and he said, this guy is hydrated. Get him off that. You're killing him. And that is a problem. So you've got to be, there's a fine line between how much water you take or how much liquids you take and how little you take.
Right. You've been through that challenge, and I'm just wondering, is there a tip that you can give to people, something that helped you get through that time?
You know, when I run with other people, everybody has got advice, and people get very confused, and especially on injuries. Do this, don't do that. You can't do this, you can do this, and then someone else says the opposite. And so I just believe in listening to yourself, and you will get through that injury. It's not going to be there forever. And I've seen guys that have been running with injuries that you would never consider that they'd be able to do something. But a lot of it is in the head. If you believe you can do something, you can overcome anything.
Yes. So it's just having that mental strength
and attitude.
And know that you will get through it.
Exactly. That's right. That's why we do these things.
Yeah, exactly. Alan, you've done a few parkruns as well. Tell us a bit about your parkrun journey.
So we would never have time to do parkruns because parkruns would be in the middle of our training on a Saturday morning. So we would rather have been doing the longer ones. And now that I've slowed down a bit, I've decided to do the park runs, and I quite enjoy it because it's flat out from the start, and I can do a 5K park run in a good time and have a perfect workout, which you don't do if you're doing a long 30-kilometer run. I can get my pulse rate up as high as I can,
Yes.
and I feel fantastic afterwards.
Yes.
So that's what I enjoy doing. And I can race against the juniors and the guys 20 years and 30 years younger than me, and I can knock the thing out of them and
Yeah.
enjoy it. And
Yeah.
I get a kick out of that.
Oh, fabulous. And your local park run is quite a technical trail run, really.
Yes, it is. And I've done 5 park runs, different park runs, and I've done one international one in Melbourne. And this one here has got 159 meters elevation, all off-road. And that's because I do trail runs. I enjoy that. I prefer doing trail runs to road running.
Yes.
So that is a challenge.
Yes. And with that elevation and being a 5K park run on a technical trail course, you're still doing around the 24-minute mark and coming first in your age category and beating a lot of other people that are younger than you.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So well done on that.
Yeah,
congratulations. Alan, you're part of a running club. Tell us a little bit about the community and what it's like being part of that and being able to encourage one another.
Yeah, so what I do is I've been a member of a couple of running clubs in the years. I go out of my way to welcome new runners, because someone would say to them, "Why don't you start running?" And then they'd go to a running club, and I find it a lot that people in their little groups would chat each other, and they wouldn't see anybody else coming into the club as new members.
Right.
So I would go out of my way to go and introduce myself to them and give them the help that I can to make them welcome. Because I met a girl one day, and I went and I said, "Hey, welcome." And this, she said, "You are the first person that has spoken to me, and I've been to this running club 7 times." And you don't need that.
No.
I mean, it's not a business. We are running because we all enjoy it. But people get they get into sort of into a track where they just in their little groups and they don't see anybody else. They've got blinkers on their eyes, that I call it.
Yeah.
So that's what I enjoy doing. And like I say, I enjoy speaking to the international people on Comrades.
Yeah.
I'm just a very friendly person, and I enjoy doing that. So
that's a great little reminder for us to remember the first time we went and joined the running club. Why did we join it? Because possibly we wanted that connection. But also, I suppose in the beginning, you're looking for people that can give you advice. What does a successful life in running look like to you now?
So when I turned 65, I retired, and we were going through all my policies and everything. And the guy that was doing it said to me, "Alan, everything looks fine. You've just got one problem." And I thought, "Oh, what is the problem?" He said, "You're too fit for your age. You're going to live too long."
What a compliment.
And you know what is actually shocking, but it was true, because I looked at my friends. I went to one of my friends' funerals a year or 2 ago, and I was the only person still running. And I looked at the rest of them. They were overweight, high blood pressure, cholesterol, everything else. And you think, money is not the most important thing in your life. The most important thing in your life is your health. If you get older and you can't enjoy your life, what is the use? You can have all the money in the world, but you can't use it.
Yes.
And so that over the years has been a saving grace for me and my wife, that we are both fit, healthy, and we can enjoy our lives.
Yes. But it's also because you've made it that way, haven't you? You've always been active.
Always been active,
and eat healthily, etc.
And where I live, with these stairs, I've got 20 years younger than me. I can't get up my stairs.
Right. Yeah. Alan's got quite a steep section here, as you can see. Look at the view down in the background. The driveway's right up that way. There's quite a few stairs here. So if you're going to stay here for a long time, Alan, you need to make sure you do your running and stay fit. Alan, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions here, and you give me the first answer that comes into your head. Trail or road?
Trail.
Fabulous. Pain or fear, which is harder?
None.
I
enjoy both of them.
That's the positive side of Alan coming through again. The most unforgettable race?
Every race is unique. They've all got their challenges, so I wouldn't say one stands out amongst the rest.
Right. One lesson running taught you about life?
Is the positive side of life. And finishing a race like Comrades changes a person. They believe in themselves, and after that, they can do anything. Nothing is impossible. And I've seen that before. People that have said they can never do it, done that, and then just go onto greater things.
Yeah.
So that is one thing it teaches you, is to become a positive person.
Fabulous. Alan, is there anything else that you'd like to share with people listening there? Any thoughts you have or last ideas that you'd like to leave with people?
No, I just think that running is it can change your life. Just do something that you enjoy doing it. Don't get pressurized. If you do a park run, if you do an ultra, if you do a normal run, the people that you meet are likewise. Same type of people. I've made a lot of friends all over the country, and we're all the same. So you get into that group with positive thinking people, and enjoy it. It's just such a great thing, and it gives you that longevity. It'll be there for the rest of your life, and that's it.
Alan Coulter is proof limits are often imagined. 30 comrades, hundreds of marathons, 1 kidney, and still showing up, still running, still inspiring. If this episode made you rethink what's possible, share it with someone who needs that reminder today. Alan, thank you for reminding us that age is not the finish line.
Yeah.
Quitting is.
And like I say, you're never too old to start. Do it now.